Washington didn't win the election so much as it outmaneuvered democracy on a technicality. Millions of legal ballots vaporized. Poof. Voters of color targeted with all the grace of a banker foreclosing on a food bank. This wasn't voter fraud. It was voter frauding. The art of removing the voter altogether. And while you were watching headlines about space billionaires and AI girlfriends, the real election story was written in disappearing ink. Postcards that no one returned, ballots tossed for missing initials, and vigilantes dressed like Doc Holliday purging voter rolls in the name of freedom. Well, with us right now is Greg Palast, the investigative reporter who's made a career out of exposing the fine print in America's grand electoral swindle. You've seen his work in The Guardian, Democracy Now!, and alongside Tom Hartman. He's also the author of bestsellers like The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, a title that somehow hasn't gone out of style. His latest expose is a film called Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. And it's narrated by Rosario Dawson, produced by Martin Sheen, and unleashed onto the world for free streaming by none other than Leonardo DiCaprio. Greg Palast, I want to welcome you to the Cary Harrison Files.
Glad to be back with you.
It is nice to see you again, my friend. You've been doing this work for way longer than I can remember, more competently than anyone else I can remember. And the story you told before augured the future that we now see and now live in today. If Trump won, who exactly lost besides, say, 3.5 million votes?
Okay, so for those of you who don't know Greg Palast, and by the way, you can see that film at gregpalast.com. For now more, 25 years, I've been covering for Guardian, Rolling Stone, and of course, Pacifica stations, what we politely call vote suppression, which basically means shafting voters of color out of their vote. So and I'm a statistician, an economist, a forensic economist. That means I do a lot. I'm a detective that does math. And what I've uncovered going through official, and by the way, again, these are the official files of the U.S. government hidden in plain sight. We have an agency called the Election Assistance Commission, which not only tells you how many people voted in America, but whose vote didn't count. What? In America, here's our nasty little secret. We don't let every citizen vote, and we don't count every vote that's cast. Now, what does that mean? Okay. Well, it comes down to this. If not for these Jim Crow tactics, if not for shafting people out of their votes, Kamala Harris would have won an additional 3,565,000 votes. That's a pretty sharp analysis. I've taken this, by the way, to federal court for the NAACP and for Jesse Jackson and other voting rights groups. So this has gone through federal court vetting. So basically, Harris would have won the popular vote and would have won Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, winning the presidency by including the Electoral College. Now, so what happened? What's going on? How did these votes not get counted? How come citizens weren't allowed to vote? Let me give you a couple numbers. 4.7 million people in the year before in 2023, so the year before the election. This is when they pulled this stunt. 4.7 million people were removed from the voter rolls, with absolutely purged from the voter rolls with absolutely no evidence that they were not legal voters. And I'm not guessing. I took the voter rolls, every person that was removed, 500,000 people removed in the state of Georgia. And I got the experts from the U.S. Postal Service and Amazon, they know where you live, Amazon. And they told us, they went through every single name and said 63.3% of the names, they gave us the full list of names of voters who were legal but were removed by the Republican Secretary of State of Georgia before the last presidential election. Overwhelmingly, these were voters of color. And if you go see my film, Vigilantes, Inc., you get to meet a couple of these voters who lost their vote. I was actually at the polling station, Cary, in Atlanta when a 92-year-old woman in a walker showed up. She'd been voting at the same place for 50 years. She showed up with her granddaughter. They said, "Scram, you can't vote here. You don't live here anymore." She says, "What?" She's been living down the street for more than 50 years, same place. But they removed her in this great purge because overwhelmingly voters of color, the color being blue, black people, Hispanics, young people. And this is Christine Jordan, Martin Luther King's cousin. And they removed Martin Luther King's cousin from the voter rolls. And she'd never moved from the house they said that she moved from, because I went to her house and there was a picture of Martin Luther King on the wall having dinner with her. So she's been there at least 50 years, but that's just one example. And then we had this new.
Let me just jump in for a second, because
so there
are millions of us who have voted whatever way we voted, and it didn't turn out that way. And forever, there have been exit polls. There are them in the United States. There are them in Europe. There are them at the children's classroom. There are voting exit polls. People walk out and say how they did it, and then you find out in real life it didn't turn out that way. Either everyone lied, millions of people were able to talk to each other secretly and say, "I'm going to lie and say I voted this way or that way." That factors into this too, doesn't it?
Well, what we found is what's called the red shift. What that means is that we have exit polling, and it seems to always turn out, for example, that Al Gore won in 2000 by the exit polls, Kerry won by the exit polls in 2004, Hillary Clinton won in 2016. So what's going on here? The answer is no. By the way, exit polls are used by the U.S. State Department as the gold standard for determining whether an election is honest. But that doesn't apply to the United States, apparently. So what happened? How come people said they voted for the Democratic candidate? Now, I'm not partisan about this. I'm just an investigative reporter. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm just telling you the facts, ma'am. And what happens is that people go in, they know that they voted. What they don't know is if their vote counted. For example, in the last election, there were over 1 million provisional ballots cast. Now, if you're white and you're listening to this, you've probably never seen a provisional ballot in your life. If you're African American, the chance about 1 in 3 that you've been handed a provisional ballot. Now, you think you voted. You fill out this form because your name was missing from the voter rolls. They didn't like your ID. They didn't like the color of your skin, whatever it is. Especially black men are shunted continually to these provisional ballots. I call them back of the bus placebo ballots. You think you voted, but you haven't. So you go out and you talk to the exit pollster and you say, "Oh, I voted for Hillary Clinton. I voted for Bobby Kennedy," whatever you voted for. But you don't know if your vote counted. And if you have that provisional ballot, roughly half are thrown in the garbage. And it's not small. We lost over 1 million provisional ballots. Were thrown out overwhelmingly. Voters of color. In fact, a Harvard professor for the U.S. Civil Rights Commission did an analysis and found out your chance of your ballot being tossed out on technical grounds, and we're talking a couple million ballots, is 900% higher if you're black than if you're white.
Well, that begs the obvious question. Now, there are people in Europe watching right now who are not, whose families did not own slaves, maybe way long ago in a different level when there were fiefdoms and castles, but generally they're just not roaring bigots and fascists. So they're not understanding, okay, why would 100,000 or 1 million black people be targeted to be removed? What's wrong with black people voting?
It's not the color of their skin, it's the color of their vote. If you can go by neighborhoods and knock out voters in zip codes, then the problem is that the color of their ballot is blue. And so they go after young people. They go after a lot of urban women. And so they know what they're targeting. So in America, our votes are basically divided ethnically. And so they know if they knock off a black voter, they know if they knock off someone under 30, they're knocking off statistically, they're going to be knocking off a Democratic voter. And now the Democrats have played some of these games too in states where they control the vote, like in California. But Democrats tend to attack each other in primaries. The problem is that on the national basis, the Republican Party has gotten very good at taking Jim Crow and shooting him into cyberspace. In fact, using AI to knock out voters. Trump's lawyer, Cleta Mitchell, the one who was on those infamous phone calls trying to pressure Georgia to reverse the vote in favor of Trump. So Trump's personal lawyer started a group called Eagle AI, where she's using AI to target voters that she says are illegal voters. Well, here's the thing. If you find an illegal voter, you don't take away their vote or challenge their vote. What you do is you arrest them. But the reason they haven't arrested illegal voters, they can't find them. And this is so literally the state of Florida challenged 178,000 voters, almost all with names like Jose Garcia, Juan Gonzalez. You get the picture. And Joe Johnson, Jesse Jackson. There's a lot of those. Anyway, so they challenged 178,000 voters. Tens of thousands lost their vote because the only way you can get your vote back is to go into court and prove that you're an American citizen. You're asking Hispanics, many of whom lived here for 400 years, and ask them to prove they're American citizens. And they found one single illegal alien voter out of the group, an Austrian Republican. That was it. Other than the Austrian Republican, 170. But the thing is, it's crazy and it's funny, but literally tens of thousands of people, almost all people of color, that is blue voters, lost their vote. And that's how Trump could take Florida, by the way.
So how much did Democrats know about this scale of suppression? I mean, we all remember Kamala Harris promising a legal fight while the ballots were still being counted, and then she just disappeared.
Well, that's the problem we have, because what's happened within the Democratic Party, there's a split. And most of the mainstream Democrats are saying, well, we can't sound like Donald Trump because he's saying elections are rigged. Well, there's a difference. He knows the elections are rigged because he rigged them with his buddies. And this is serious. And they're not done. My big fear right now, Cary Harrison, is that Trump has just signed an executive order which is going to require anyone who registers to vote or re-registers, right? About 31 million people a year register or re-register. You move your county, you got to re-register. You're going to have to prove you're a citizen. Now, that might sound, okay, yeah, only citizens should vote. But guess what, Cary? Do you know where your mommy put your birth certificate? It's got to be an original birth certificate or a passport. Now, you have a passport. And a lot of white people have passports. But only 1 in 3 black people have passports. By definition, the people who don't have passports tend to be lower income. In other words, for the most part, this is your blue Democratic voter. So they know what they're doing. Women, this is not Trump's constituency. Women, 69 million women in America have their husband's last name or their ex-husband's last name. And how do they prove they're a citizen? If they don't have a passport, they're going to have to get an original birth certificate and marriage certificate to show that their name was changed legally. And no photocopies, my friends. They're not going to accept those photocopies. I should also say that when one state tried this, Kansas, under the crypto-fascist and criminal Chris Kobach. And I say that advisedly, by the way, Chris. I know you've got a law degree from Oxford, but that doesn't give you immunity. He came up with a form for registration that required you to show citizenship. And so he knocked out 36,000 people. Almost all of them were students or members of the military at the Lawrence Air Force Base. So he knocked out our soldiers and our students. By the way, soldiers aren't all that crazy about the Trump administration. They know that.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. Ouch! Well, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, call now and get free shipping of your new CGM, plus we'll bill your insurance for you.
877-282-8102. That's 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102.
And of the 36,000 people he knocked off for not being citizens, he went into federal court and admitted that not a single one was a non-citizen. But again, they're voters of color, the color being blue, and he successfully knocked off those 36,000 voters. But now that business of saying you're not an American, and of course that would include Kenyans like Barack Obama, you're not an American and can't vote. That is going to be nationwide
or
now.
wives like Melania Trump, or say Elon Musk, or say Donald Trump, whose father was German. I mean, why not just remove all of those irritants, including yourself? But that's not the plot of the play, as we're learning. Let me just reintroduce you. Cary Harrison with you. This is the Cary Harrison Files. We are live streaming right now. You can simply Google Cary Harrison Substack or Cary Harrison YouTube, and you'll be able to watch the live video. You'll be able to see Greg Palast when you show up at your location. You don't have to get out of your car. You can just switch over to your phone and keep on watching. You'll also be able to get our newsletter, which is going to be able to have transcripts so that you can read all of the interesting breakdowns of what Greg Palast is talking about. Simply go to Cary Harrison, C-A-R-Y, like Cary Grant spelling, CaryHarrison.com to get the newsletter. Greg Palast, as you know, is an investigative journalist, a forensic economist, the man who reads election data like a coroner reads a crime scene. He's here talking mass voter purges, mail-in ballot rejections, provisional votes that have less chance of being counted than your uncle's conspiracy theory. In fact, it looks a lot like democracy held together with duct tape and denial. And this isn't about who won. It's about who was never allowed to show up. Aha! Greg Palast, investigative reporter, has made a career out of exposing the fine print in this stuff. And Greg, we're talking right now about the different ways that they're removing all the people. And we're talking now in the millions of people as people begin to evaluate their neighbors who are suddenly feeling upset. Many who might have voted for the current president are beginning to have voter remorse, and then the other ones are just feeling completely clobbered. And everyone is wondering, how did it turn out this way? You actually have data. It's not a theory.
Yeah.
You have data proving it came out a different way.
Well, and in fact, just so you know, that this data that I used and I take into federal court for these organizations, like I did a report for the ACLU as well, this comes straight out of government files. The government issues this material about who voted, who didn't vote, whose vote was not counted, whose vote was thrown in the trash. These are not my numbers. These are the federal government's own numbers. And I'm going to be posting, I've not only posted my stories at gregpalast.com, but I'm actually going to be posting all the calculations and references for those of you who are so minded to look at the numbers yourself. Here's the problem. It's getting worse. We've always had Jim Crow tactics. We've always had these problems, but right now we've got some new things. And that's why I have my film Vigilantes Inc. Again, it's free. Go to gregpalast.com, Vigilantes Inc. And this is the new system, which started out in Georgia and has gone nationwide, where anyone can challenge anyone else's vote in your county. So for example, I can say, oh, Cary Harrison, he's living in Switzerland. I can see the tree behind him. He's not an American. Don't let him vote. Now, who is Greg Palast to say Cary Harrison can't vote? I'm not the government, but we have these new vigilante challenge laws. We had in the last election, by August, there were 317,000 challenges mounted by a single organization, a Trump front group called True the Vote out of Texas. They challenged a third of a million people, including, by the way, you'll see in my film, and they use these front guys. They're all GOP operatives, by the way. The chairman of the Republican Party in southern Georgia, a guy named Alton Russell. And this guy actually, you'll see in the film, he actually dresses up like a vigilante, like Doc Holliday. He challenged the vote of 4,000 people, most of them black soldiers at Fort Benning, Georgia. Soldiers, including, you'll meet one, Major Gamaliel Turner, career military, Pentagon expert, 70 years old. They wouldn't send him his absentee ballot because this goober from southern Georgia challenged his vote and other black soldiers. He's an African American. They picked on the wrong guy. His daddy was co-founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference with Martin Luther King. And so he calls up and says, where's my absentee ballot? They said, oh, you've been challenged, Mr. Turner. What do you mean I've been challenged? He said, oh, no problem. Just come into the office and prove you're a citizen and we'll give you your ballot. He said, you're telling me 2 days before election to fly 2,700 miles to prove I'm a citizen. This is Major Turner speaking to you from my military base. By the way, he did.
I'm gonna dovetail on that, Greg, because what you're saying is so true, and an analogy will help people get how true this is. It's important because for some of you, this may be the first time you've ever heard this, and you're thinking, "Oh, come on!" No, it's true. Take the state of Florida that Greg mentioned earlier, where now over 1,000 books have been banned. Tolstoy, The Wizard of Oz, a lot of books you would think are very normal. And anyone can call up the state of Florida and ban a book. You have no special credentials. You have not had to have read the book. You just simply have heard about the book and you object and it is gone. That's what Greg is saying. The law says all you have to know is that Timmy voted. You don't like it, you call up, it blocks Timmy. And by the time Timmy can cure that and have his vote counted, is it in time, Greg, or is it forever later?
I have to say that only 8 of those soldiers were given back their vote in southern Georgia out of 4,000 in that one town. One woman challenged 32,000 voters. Like I say, that's just in Georgia. This accounted 100% for Trump's victory in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where there are these massive purges. And some people say, oh, wait, don't you have a Democratic governor in Wisconsin? Yeah, but you got a Republican legislature. And they're the ones that have passed these laws purging over 100,000 voters, for example, from the voter rolls in Wisconsin. Basically the number of people purged from the voter rolls in Wisconsin was 4 times Trump's margin. And when for the Washington Post, by the way, of all places, I actually charted where these voters were. Almost every single voter removed in Wisconsin was either a black voter in Milwaukee or a student in Madison, Wisconsin at the university. So in other words, they're all voters of color and the color is blue. This is what's going on. And what we have to do, by the way, as we know from the Biden victory, and it's not whether I'm for or against Biden or any of that, but they can't, and Obama's victory, you cannot steal all the votes all the time. And your best single defense, people say, what can we do, is register. And you say, well, I am registered. No, you better check your registration online, which you can do everywhere in America now. Just go to vote.org and see if you're still registered or you've been challenged. Keep checking that, especially 60 days before an election. Protect your vote, protect the people you know. Go to vote.org for that and watch the film, gregpalast.com, Vigilantes Inc., and you can pass that link on because, grab the popcorn. It's, like I say, it's Rosario Dawson narrating. So it is entertaining. It's horrifying and entertaining at the same time. So join me there. Pass the word. Protect yourself and your loved ones. Don't let them steal your vote.
I thank you so much, Greg. We're going to pause for a second to give a little love to the station, raise a little cash here. We'll come by and finish up with you with a couple of quick more questions, if that's okay. Plus, we're then going to open up the phone lines, let you ask Greg some questions and discuss this thing. But right now, this is the Cary Harrison Files. And coming up, we're going to have a little fun. We're going to open the phones. Vanished? The Epstein files? Yes, still sealed. The planet on fire. Democracy currently being held hostage by a band of bureaucrats with a shredder fetish. We're opening up the phones and we're not looking for polite. If you've got proof, if you've got rage, if you've got questions, or just one damn good conspiracy that doesn't involve aliens, this is your time. And you can call in before the future hangs up. And now this.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. Ouch! Well, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, call now and get free shipping of your new CGM, plus we'll bill your insurance for you.
877-282-8102. That's 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102.
Listen, well, it's still legal.
The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
And you are listening to the Cary Harrison Files. We are live streaming on Substack, on YouTube, on Instagram, on everything with a chip and a signal. Simply Google Cary Harrison, C-A-R-Y. Same spelling as Cary Grant, and whatever platform you want to hear it on, see it on, and it will come up and you'll be able to grab it there. Also, I want you to get the newsletter at CaryHarrison.com, because there you're going to get a transcript of this entire conversation with Greg Palast. And he's given so much information, you're going to want to be able to read about it. Plus, what's more fun than reading the transcript of the callers? Wow. I'm telling you, that's kind of like porn, but better. So it's all in there. Right now, we're talking to Greg Palast. We're going to finish up. The truth is showing up here half-dressed. It smells like gasoline, and it's demanding a lawyer. Our phone lines are open. This is your moment. Now, I know most shows hand you headlines like a sleepy waiter refilling coffee. Not here. We're serving up the news flambéed with a side of outrage and a very sharp fork. So let's take stock, shall we? Greg Palast just told us that your vote is now a suggestion, if not a right. Or was a right once upon a time. If you're black, if you're young, if you're poor, or maybe just you're inconvenient, your ballot is more likely to be rejected than a high schooler's fake ID. And guess what? No hacking required. Just voter purges, poisoned postcards, and signature mismatches that would make a handwriting analyst weep. Let's jump to the phones. Say hello to Carlos in Carson. Carlos, you're on the Cary Harrison File with Greg Palast.
Good morning, good show. Listen, those Epstein files were never meant to be released by any administration. They're just playing around. Do you think they're gonna release files that show that Prince Andrews was there at the island, that Alan Dershowitz traveled over there, that Bill Clinton went over there, Trump? Oh, no way. They're not going to release that information. And besides that, there is a more sinister hidden agenda behind these files, and that it's an intelligence operation involving genetic manipulation of probably fetuses and stuff like that. There were a lot of scientists that were traveling to the island financed by Epstein. See, they were doing some genetic experimentation. They're not going to release
where do you come about that? I mean, it sounds great. I love it because I love science fiction. But where do you come on that he was running a giant, pharmaceutical laboratory system? Really, as far as we know, people were just getting boinked.
Well, let me throw in something if I can. Hey, Carlos, how about this? Carlos? Okay, this is Greg Palast. Listen, it's all very interesting, and that's exactly why Trump wants to distract you with Epstein and porn and suggestions of big shots and all this stuff. Remember, what he doesn't want you to talk about is that he promised to end inflation, and guess what? He hasn't. Prices of everything have going through the roof to a great extent because it's a self-inflicted wound with these tariffs. That just a tax on Americans of billions and billions, and it's going to end up $1 trillion. They want to distract you from what's going on. We're losing. The tariffs have now caused a drop in steel, in employment in steel, and we've lost 4,000 jobs out of the auto industry in America. not to mention the longshoreman jobs, et cetera, while Trump is talking about returning jobs where you and I can put little screws into iPhones. No, I don't want to put little screws into iPhones. That's not what we want. So the reason I'm bringing this up is Epstein is another great distraction from our distractor in chief. If it's not Epstein, it's going to be Obama is a traitor. It's going to be throw Hillary in jail. It's going to be all this stuff, all to distract us from what's happening.
Yes,
and that's what I worry about. Is that so? Why feed these distraction makers when they're just trying to not talk about what happened in the election? They don't want to talk about what's happening. I mean, my God, they're cutting millions of people out of Medicaid. It's life and death. They're cutting food stamps. I mean, food? Really? Okay, so they want you to talk about Epstein. So talk about Epstein, but that's missing the entire point. Like, who the hell cares, frankly?
And to this date, in the last 6 months,
I do have to say, I have to
100,000 people have died of AIDS that would not be dead 6 months earlier. And we're looking at 1.5 million in the next year and a half. This is a genocide of extraordinary proportions done on purpose without any eyewitnesses. Same thing.
Yep. And that's exactly right. Well, Cary and Carlos, unfortunately, I have to go, but I'm so thrilled to have had a chance to speak to your audience and my buddies at KPFK. And Carlos, thank you for your insights. And get to gregpalast.com. I'll see you there. Watch a movie.
Thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate it very much. Keep going, my friend. Greg Palast, of course, is a workhorse. He is one of the few who has been doing this kind of work, this level of work independently, and has brought home the information that you would not get otherwise. And, you know, that's part of what I do here is bring on some of these voices. You will have heard him on Tom Hartman and other places, but other people will not have heard him in the places that this show goes. So this is kind of a first-time listen for many. We're talking right now, opening up the phones. I want you guys to be able to talk about all the things that are going on. We have Richard, we have Harold coming up next at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. We were talking a little bit to Greg about voting and how that works. There's also the Epstein files or Epstein files, still sealed tighter than a Vatican scandal, right? Meanwhile, what has just happened? The executive order was given 2 days ago. Catholic priests that molest children are no longer under legal jeopardy, right? That means anybody who does it is not necessarily illegal. And therefore, if it comes back to the people where it really would hurt or damage them, it may not be anymore illegal through executive order. And as you know, the executive orders seem to be pretty good because the Supreme Court can't wait to rubber stamp whatever it is without explanation. We have never had this in the history of my country, my ancestors, your country, your ancestors. It's just mind-numbing. How about climate collapse? We've got wildfires, hurricanes, floods throwing raves in the streets. The planet's boiling over. Billionaires are buying bunkers. Meanwhile, you're being told to recycle better and stop leaving your fridge open because it's your fault. Oh, no, it's not. And let's not forget the AI apocalypse brought to you by the same tech giants who made CAPTCHA, which we all encounter when we're trying to buy something or go somewhere, makes CAPTCHA feel like a psychological exam. They're busy automating elections, identity, and reality itself, while Congress still can't figure out how email works. If Chuck Schumer once again stands up and pulls his reading glasses to the end of his nose and says he's disappointed without pulling out a flamethrower, without self-immolating in rage, but what are you going to do? Because you're watching it. It's unfolding in front of you. Student debt rising again, workers striking, housing unaffordable. I know this is all lovely news, right? Civil rights rolled back with all the subtlety of a monster truck rally, like it's done in front of you, like it's great. So your invitation to continue to call in and get loud is, did you try to vote and get slapped with a provisional placebo? Are you watching your neighborhood drown or burn or get bulldozed by developers? Do you know someone on the inside, an ex-cop, a poll worker, a data analyst with a conscience? Are you done yelling at your steering wheel and ready to yell into this mic, into your phone? So it's not a therapy session. It's kind of a war room. If you've got a theory, a confession, a question, no journalist dares to ask. This is in the US, the TV. And we're not talking watching BBC or anywhere else in the world, Le Monde, France 24. No, but in the US, asking a question that no journalist dares to ask, what is it? Or a prediction that'll make us laugh nervously and sleep with one eye open, you can call in now. Because silence is what power counts on. 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Let's go to Harold in Santa Barbara. You're on the Cary Harrison Files.
Yeah, thanks a lot, you two. You guys are cheaper than a ticket to the Ice House in Pasadena. I tell you, that's not an insult, that's a compliment. And my question now is your guest, did he grow up around Chicanos? That's my question.
He did. He actually grew up in a part of LA in the Valley called Sun Valley. So yeah, those were his buddies. Those were his classmates. And Greg,
I know that area. Thank you.
You're welcome, my friend. And Greg's already gone because he had another appointment, another commitment. So we were glad to have him on when we did. Let's go next to Richard, who does have a question for Greg, but I'll see what I can do. Richard, you're on the Cary Harrison Files.
Okay, well, you can do me a huge favor as regards Greg, since he's not on the air now, is have him go to PASOIR.com. There is a plan to clean up all voting that we're going to ask him to lead. And so if he would email info@PASOIR.com, that we could get a discussion going, because all this stuff that he's doing with voting, it all needs to be fixed, and there's a way to fix it. Now, that group we've talked about before is called Sun. I don't know if it's a group or not, as some people, at least one. It's Shift the Unfit Narrative. And what Stun is saying is, before September 16th, when our next anniversary for our Constitution is, when it was ratified, that is the date that by then Trump will be out of office. And I know everybody thinks it's impossible, but somebody says it's possible. So if people would go to PASOIR.com and read the entire...
as much as I love that, somebody said it. Somebody said it. It's kind of like the really bad news we all deal with today, which was forbidden when I was taught in journalism. And this is not about you. Not about you. So I apologize for raising my voice. But it used to be absolutely forbidden to say an undisclosed source or sources close to the investigation. You couldn't say that. Anyone can make that up. 4 people close to the president said something, and you never have to prove it, and you can make it up. And it is outrageous. So let's do what we can to avoid somebody said something, because we're gossiping. At this point in life, we need reality. We need tools we can actually use so we can navigate this impossible and unpredictable future. So let's not quote somebody that we don't know who they are. We can't get to them. We don't know who the source is. Enough. Let's leave that up to Fox. Leave it up to Newsmax. Leave it up to People Magazine. Leave it up to TikTok. But here, this is it. We've had the money yanked from public media. Why? Because we deal with facts. We are so inconvenient, audibly and visually, that we have been fully defunded. I can promise you these other places, they get to fly along, Us Magazine, whatever, not a problem, no harassment. The harassment comes here because you're dealing with reality. So all of us has that obligation, just like we have an obligation to pause for a second.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. Ouch! Well, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, call now and get free shipping of your new CGM, plus we'll bill your insurance for you.
877-282-8102. That's 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102. 877-282-8102.